It was breakfast. She sat in front of the empty plate, staring at the greasy remnants of chicken eggs and fried pork strips. She moved her vision over to her right hand. Her hand was laying on top of a large book. Had she been reading it? Why was she reading the dictionary? She looked up, her gaze slowly following, and smiled. Her parent, Dad, yes, it was her dad, was sitting in front of her. He was making noises, but not noises. Talking, he was talking to her. She could feel her mind shifting to her fingertips, touching the dictionary. Slowly, she was able to focus on his words, the sounds becoming sentences coupled with thoughts. She smiled at him as memories filled her of a good childhood. He took care of her, fed her, hugged her. "Callie, you full?" he asked. She nodded briskly and let her mouth move with her thoughts. "Yeah, I had enough." She touched her stomach. She felt it. It felt both full and vastly empty. Hungry and full filled her body. "I think I did." He got up and started clearing the table. "Well, hurry and get ready for school. I'm expecting you to do well on your algebra test today." Algebra, she thought. Math was not her expertise. Formulas and numbers ran through her mind. They came quickly, far quicker than she remembered. Calculations flowed through her mind. "I think I'll be fine, Dad. The test'll be easy." She pushed away from the table and stood up. Callie looked around and her father was gone. She was in a classroom, not from her childhood, but rather her second year of college. She looked down. A chair desk combo was waiting for her to sit, and the dictionary was still in her hand. She tucked her dress under her knees and sat down. She, Callie, looked around and saw numerous other students filling the seats around her. She stared at the one in front of her, and the girl felt her stare, turning to look at her. Callie felt the oddity of it, the weirdness that the woman looking at her had her own face, and yet it felt like that was correct. "You look like me." The false Callie's face was solemn. "Thank you for our face," it said to her. "It's my face," Callie said, and raised her hand to touch the girl. The girl lifted her finger, mirroring her movements, and the two touched. Callie blinked. One moment she was staring at her doppelganger, and the next she was watching the sun rise through the eyes of millions of shellfish, like creatures drifting in the ocean. Callie blinked again, and she was back in the classroom. The girl in front of her was gone, but the dozens of other mirror women were staring at her from their desks. The teacher walked over and looked at her, also sharing her face. "We were discussing Aristotle's De Anima. Did you read it, California?" the teacher asked. Callie nodded. "Yes, I read it. I know it." "Good. Then you know that we, humans, are rational animals then. We are a step beyond the sensitive souls that have lived on this earth for millions of years. What do you think it would be like to be a dog?" Callie's face grew puzzled, and she turned to the girl on her right. Another Callie stared back. The student raised her finger up. Callie reached over and touched it. Another blink, and Callie was somewhere else. She ran through the forest, and with each footfall she could feel the mycelium in her toes quickly link and spark with the threads in the detritus under her. She was an individual in her pack one moment, and were linked to the entirety of the forest the next. Moment by moment, singular, then plural. She shared her feelings across the entirety of the earth, and then flexed back into her body. Over and over she flashed back and forth, and then she blinked back into the classroom. The girl to her right was gone. The teacher was still staring at her. "California, how do you think an animal would react to being a human? Do you think they would be able to grasp the higher concepts of algebra? Language? What about ethics? Do you think protozoa would understand orbital mechanics?" Callie looked around. Other girls wearing her face were getting up. They moved closer to her, surrounding her. The faces all stared down at her, and in a quick rush, the throng grabbed her. Callie felt small, young. She was being born, but not from her mother. She had fallen into the sea and had just escaped a red translucent shell. Things moved in the dark waters. Everything around her was large. She was small and thin. Something lunged at her, sucked her into its mouth, and down into its stomach. There, rather than dying, she clawed. Her body of wires and threads wound into the walls. She could feel the creature. She moved into the creature. She could see and smell through its organs. She could move it. She was it. Callie took the creature through the ocean. Her wires trailed behind the body, eventually touching others, binding them to her will. Slowly, her school grew. Some of her bodies were hungry, and she would have them feed on the dying leaves of floor-bound sunlight eaters. She grew through the seas, uniting entire ecosystems, trimming the dead and using them to feed the living. She felt the ocean flow around her bodies. Currents pulled on tendrils, stretching them to more and more bodies to feel with. She then met the others. In the dark, things moved. Her bodies disappeared when the darkness got too close. Some bodies lasted longer against the ones she couldn't live in. She had those bodies breed more and used them to attack the unlivable ones. They began to flee her, creeping out of the waters and taking off into the forests of the land. Callie followed. She touched the tall light eaters, threading through their trunks and root vines. Here, out of the wet, her wires separated. She could not be the net like she was in the waters. Her net would have to live in the ground. She broke off into the animals of the dry, linking back up to her net when they touched. She used the dry life to hunt the dead ones. The dead ones, however, had found the metal ones. The ones of the mountains and holes fought with the dead threads, as did she. Against her, the dark threads living in the corpses were losing. Her bodies ate them, cut them, and ripped them apart. But against the ones of the ground and mountains, they were winning. The threads of the ground breathed fire and used weapons beyond her understanding, but still, they lost to the dead threads. Then, the dead won, and balled themselves up into the highest mountain peaks. She could not reach them. The air was too thin and too cold. So, she waited for them to come down. She watched with the eyes of an entire world as the mountain erupted into the lights of the dark sky. She kept watching, and they never came down from the mountains. Eventually, she bred creatures that could climb there, and she hunted the dead ones. They were gone. Only a hole where the mountain had been was left. Callie came back to the classroom. Everyone was gone but her. I chased away the Gallic, and they took away the Gree. Callie touched her hand to her own face and remembered. Rockborn sat in Callie's chair, overlooking the holodisplay. Veritas had Stubborn and Slayer highlighted, glowing gold near the power core. They had smelled out and isolated one of the creatures responsible for cutting control lines throughout the ship. Stubborn flashed a series of colors into her comm. It's bound up and hiding in a pipe. We have both end valves closed off. What do you want us to do? Rockborn looked over at Veritas. Ideas. Veritas nodded. That is a heat dump. We can vent a portion of plasma and be rid of the creature. Rockborn shook his head. We have it trapped, and we need to know exactly what we are dealing with. You said there are several on board, right? Yes, sir. The damage is still increasing despite that one being contained. Systems across the ship are failing. Rockborn changed over to the open channel. I need maintenance teams to power control. We have one of the offending creatures contained and need backup in capturing it. I want it brought down to analysis as quickly and safely as possible. Rockborn watched as several teams rerouted from around the ship. Down in power control, a door opened on the far wall, and a team of Gallic and Craddock Guardians entered. They walked over, approaching Stubborn and Slayer. One of the Gallic clusters stepped close. I was a core operator on a Gree ship prior. The corpses moved their eyes over the pipes, tracing lines. These lines are used primarily in emergency situations. If we turn off the next set of valves, we can cut this section. No systems will be hindered unless something goes wrong with the core. One of the Craddock looked over everything. All right. You copy that, Helm? The Craddock waved over to his three buddies. Keep watch on these Gallic. We got a team bringing cutting gear now. The team arrived with saws and torches. The room was filled with activity as everyone got to work, extracting the contained creature. Then with a pop, the sealed portion of tubing was free. 2 of the Craddock Guardians took hold of either end, and they carried it down the halls with a full entourage. Grape Juice had a biohousing prepared when they arrived. The 2 set the pipe into the enclosure, and she activated the auto-sealing door. Veritas activated 2 box spiders that were left inside, and they set to work microcutting the pipe open. The video feed was broadcast to numerous active screens across the habitus. Rockborn and Josiah watched from the bridge. Grape Juice was at the lab controls waiting as the cut was made. A square of metal was removed, and immediately a scissor-like claw poked out through the hole, followed a slender, segmented body wiggled out. The creature had mandibles and eyes on one end, and the claw was poking out from the other. Across the entirety of its body, filaments of string floated, touching the walls of the containment housing. Grape Juice manipulated a robotic probe, aiming in on the creature. She hit the button, causing the arm to abruptly latch onto the creature's proposed head and neck. It was lifted off the floor of the housing, squirming in place. She activated the next button, sending in 3 needles into the creature so as to take tissue samples. Immediately, the screens in front of her began rolling with protein codes. She spoke into her chest device. Sample secured. Documentation beginning. Everyone, you see what we are hunting. Find the rest of these bugs and stop them. Good job, capture team. Maintenance. Power core is ready for repairs, Rockborn announced. Rockborn didn't show it, but he was startled when the golden AI appeared abruptly next to him. He turned his scaled head and looked at Veritas. Excuse me, sir. One of my camera emplacements has picked up something you need to see right now. Put it on the display. Rockborn and Josiah turned and looked as the island's coast materialized, trees swaying, and ocean waves crashing against the rocks. Josiah sighed. What now? His eyes quickly widened as he saw it. She got free. Josiah brought his hand to his mouth as he held back tears. She's free! Hurry, get someone out there! Rockborn held up a hand. Hold on. Look at her. Veritas, enhance. There's something off. Callie walked free from the surf toward the tree line. As she walked across the sand, roots peeked out, presenting smooth footing for her. Her bare feet found the dry footing, and wisps of thread reached out to grate them. Behind her, amphibious creatures of numerous shapes, shells, limbs, eye types, and modes of movement followed her. 2 large, slender creatures with taloned limbs broke the water's surface and trailed behind her. Trees creaked and groaned as they moved aside to let her and her attendants pass. A small, fluttering creature hovered close to her, staying still near her head. She raised her hand under it. The creature dropped her missing comm into her palm. Casually, she paused and inserted the device back into her ear. Hello? Habitas, she called. Rockborn in the helm room, surrounded by crew, answered. This is the Habitas. Go ahead, Callie. Callie smiled and looked up at the camera post near her. I would like to speak with Josiah. Rockborn looked over at the pilot. Josiah lifted his hands briefly as he shrugged. Rockborn looked back down at the display. Callie, you appear to have been compromised. Before you speak to him, I would like to have you quarantined first. Rockborn watched her, staring up at him. Behind her in the sea, 3 of the larger titanic bluish-purple creatures rose again from the water. She smiled and nodded, looking down at the ground. I understand that. I do not want to be quarantined, though. She looked back up at the camera while waving back behind her. The Titans backed away from the island and sank back into the water. I agree I am compromised, obviously. I am still coming to terms with it myself. I don't know what to call it. It wanted to talk. It couldn't, though. It didn't even know talking was what it wanted. Anyway, I'm calling back the critters hurting the ship. They're kind of an instinctive gree-hunting thing. I don't mean any harm. If you could, have Josiah meet me outside near the side door. Rockborn looked at him. Your call. Josiah nodded. We kinda had a thing on Vitalia. I owe her the kindness. Rockborn nodded agreement. We'll have your back. Josiah patted the giant scaled man on the shoulder. Thanks. I hope we don't need it. Josiah walked slowly down the ramp, staring at Callie and the parade of life behind her. He raised up a hand in a stagnant hello. She smiled. Several creatures behind her jumped. One multi-legged worm did a flip. Hi, Josiah. Sorry this is weird. He stopped at the end of the ramp, pausing so he didn't touch the dirt. Yeah, it kind of is really weird. Are you okay? Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure I'm still me. I'm tied in now. He looked past her at the numerous creatures scuttling and crawling behind her. Tied to all of that, right? She nodded. Yeah, it's hard to explain. She lifted her hand and ran it through her hair. A flock of colorful flying creatures descended from the trees and swarmed her head, moving her hair for her. She laughed and looked over at him. Yeah, that's a thing now. So the planet gave you personal helpers? She rolled her eyes and made a grimace with her mouth. The planet was kind of stupid before we came. Not like stupid, but like a bunch of animals. I guess wild is a better word. It didn't think so much as react. When it took me, it changed. We changed. Oh, it bonded to you or something? He asked. She nodded. More like I'm its ego. All this. She waved at the animals and a swirl of movement rolled through them. That's the underlying animal ID. I know it's outdated references, but it's like that. We're woven together now. Josiah slowly nodded. I understand. It would be hard for me to get you that dinner now, wouldn't it? A cacophony of hisses and clicks came from behind her. No. I didn't mean that at all with this. I wanted. She took a step forward. I needed to tell you something. I felt it when it all happened and connected. She made a fist over her stomach while she thought how to say it. I wasn't on any preventatives that night in the hotel, you know. We got drunk. I woke up in your room. Josiah shut his eyes for a moment. Holy crap, woman. Your alien bonded to a planet or something, and you're trying to tell me you got my kid in you? She looked down for a moment. The trees shuddered. I'm sorry. I know we aren't really a thing yet. It just kind of happened. Josiah lifted a hand up and opened his eyes. It's not the pressing issue. We need to get you checked out, though. This. He waved at all the animals and plants around the habitus. All of this needs to be studied. We don't really know what is going on with you, and we really don't know what is going on in you. Just because you had feelings while abducted by aliens doesn't mean they are real. A deep rumble rolled out from the ocean as she stared at him. I can feel the wombs of legions of creatures rolling with new life. I'm letting out the last breaths of multitudes with each word. Every taste, touch, smell, I feel. Every sight seen on this world I see. Senses we don't even have concepts for. I am feeling, right now. The Titan stood back up in the far distance and roared. I feel the whole of this world, including what is inside of me. Don't you fucking tell me this is made up. Josiah fell back onto the ramp as the roar hit him. He lifted a hand up. I'm sorry. You may understand, but I don't. We need time to understand this. We can't just take it in like you have. She raised her hand, looking at it. Threads floated in the air, dangling from her fingertips. You could, though. Josiah shook his head. I don't want to, though. I'm old. I've been through a lot. I don't really want to have aliens in my head. She glared at him with her eyes in the eyes of the thousands of crawling creatures near her. So what then? You going to take off? Leave me here? He stood back up with a groan. No, I'm not going to leave you here, but let's find a middle ground. I won't leave, but you don't assimilate me. Can you do that? She smiled. The two large taloned creatures near her lowered their pincers. I'm a rational woman. We can find that middle ground. Maybe you could get on some thick clothes or something and we could have lunch on the beach." He smiled. "No touching, just conversation?" She nodded. "Just conversation." Sam was in his office yelling at the holo display. Cookie, the preserver from Vitalia, was on the other end. No, this is bullshit. Humans quit gladiatorial fights thousands of years ago. We're not doing this." Cookie tapped a file, making it pop up on Sam's display. "My new associate told me about humans still having dogs fight to the death on your home worlds. Curious, turning such a friendly and loyal animal into a battle-hardened prize fighter, don't you think, Sam?" Sam paced around the desk. Yes, people still do that. But it isn't right and they get punished for it. I'm not going to let this happen." "You congratulated Crunch Cheek for winning the Twain Cup, yet he was backed up. The same tech you let him use I will be using. It is the same." Sam shook his head. "No, God damn it. It is not the same. That was a race, a competition of speed and endurance. What you are proposing is death matches. Blood sports are in a completely different category. Stupid to even compare them." Cookie was focused off screen for a moment and then turned back to Sam. "Maybe it is easy to see a difference in human minds, but all I see is the usage of tech to preserve lives beyond their death. What the individual does with their lives is their choice. If two individuals wish to fight, I say let them. You yourself fought on Kawaru. Are you not a killer, Sam? This is different," Sam said sternly at the hologram. "This is a new industry, one that will add numerous jobs here. I have 200 humans eager to fight. You say that this is something humans are against, and yet you seem to be in a minority. Please stop pressuring the Senate. You are the only objector. Do you not see that?" Sam looked across the room at Orbit, feigning sitting on a stool. Orbit gave him a sad nod. Sam looked back down at Cookie. "Fuck off, Cookie!" And he terminated the call. Sam paced over near his AI. "Am I alone on this? Blood sports were outlawed across the planets. Why are people pushing for them? This is stupid." Orbit shifted in his seat. "Well, sir, most competitive sports were in their essence ways for humans to measure themselves against others. That very measuring was to see who would win in a fight, to see who was a better specimen. Humans, well, they like to see what the best are capable of. Sports have rules to reduce injury and death because of the frailty of life. Remove that frailty, and what need do you have for the rules?" Sam stopped. "You think I'm wrong?" Orbit flickered and appeared next to him. "You really going to stand there like you are on a moral high ground?" Orbit stared at him for a moment. "Yes, I agree. You are passionate about this. You are right, sir. Many humans side with you throughout history, but it is a lensed viewpoint." "Lensed?" "Yes. Humans are omnivorous and many eat meat. Killing is a fundamental part of human history, no matter how much it is hidden away from view. Some like to distance or even remove themselves from hurting anything, while others embrace it, killing and eating as much as they can. Your views are not indicative of others of your species. It is a large gamut of views on this topic." Orbit pulled up images of stadiums, displaying them around the office. Aztecs had a form of death soccer. Romans, yes, they had their gladiators. Early America had its concussion-causing football. European Spanish countries had bull slaying, which itself was based on older Mediterranean cultures. The HFY, as civilized as it is, still has prisoner termination contests. You see, sir? See what? Barbarism, love of violence, Sam shouted while walking to his desk. Exactly, sir. Evolution is real, sir, and humans are actively influenced by it. Humanity has tried to pull away, repress even, the need to hurt and kill, but it is a part of your species. Look at this data if you want. Orbit pulled up numerous graphs, illuminating the office. Hit shows for the last 4 centuries. Notice their ratings and reason for their ratings. Violence, blood, and note also the inclusion of specific crimes. You see how many women partake of murder shows? Your species has a fascination with violence, and it's completely understandable. Sam sat down in his chair and poured a whiskey. Doesn't mean it should be condoned. It is something we should repress, bury even. This preserver gladiator stupidity needs to not happen. Orbit nodded. Maybe so, sir. Maybe I and all the other AI shouldn't be either. Maybe the tar shouldn't exist, nor should Dam. Hell, maybe we should declare war on Kami. Get rid of that abomination too while we are at it. Sam clenched a fist near his face, shutting his eyes. Those are all different issues. The issue is the same. You are in charge here, and you get to choose what things you are morally okay with, and what you aren't. Is this where you're going to draw the line? Sam took a sip and then stared at Orbit. Yup. Orbit appeared in the chair across from him. Did you look over this Mr. Gwyn's business plan? Sam sighed. No need to. You sure? The Gallic you have sent to Vitalia on a work release program are dying. Their suits are being neglected due to not being able to afford maintenance. Their suits then end up tearing, and they get exposed to the very pathogens you have declared not be stifled so as to prevent the Gallic from taking over that planet. Your plan is killing them in droves, sir. Sam's face grew saddened. I didn't mean for that. It's understandable, sir. They are a terrifying species. Your arm still hurt? Sam looked at the scar where he was stung by one of the parasites. Yes, always. Cookie's Arena has hired several hundred Gallic, and the pay is life-changing for them. Not only could they afford suit repairs, but they would have access to fresh bodies that they are currently lacking. Do you see? Sam nodded. Sir, this industry, albeit violent and bloody, would give a violent and bloody species an outlet to safely grow in society. Sam rubbed his face. I can see that. Get me names and information about the Gallic down there. I'll need to talk to some of them, and get Perry on the line. I need his input on this too. Yes, sir. Thank you for considering it. I'm just thinking about it. Nothing is set in stone. Olivia was worn out and already in bed, but Sam was staying up in the living room looking over Cookie's personnel files. The list of Gallic dead was sizable, just as Orbit had mentioned. The job offers looked good. A whole industry would be starting with this one venture. Sam leaned back in his chair, staring at all the open holofiles. Orbit appeared next to him. Sir, there's a call coming from the expedition. Veritas has deemed it urgent that you respond. Put it through. 3 faces appeared looking at him. Sam bobbed his head, acknowledging each. Hello? Hello, Callie. Everything well? Callie looked at the other faces, an older man Sam remembered as Josiah Seagraves, and another alien face he didn't recognize. Callie looked back at Sam. Well, yes and no. We have a situation you need updated on. Sam nodded. Okay, go ahead. Fill me in. She looked at Josiah and the older man spoke up. Well, sir. Josiah looked over at Rockborn. Rockborn here is now in charge. He should give you the update. Sam looked at the creature's face. Hello, Rockborn. Nice to meet you. I am unfamiliar with your species, so you have to forgive me. Rockborn's face didn't move when it spoke. We have met Sam, and you do know my species. I am an altered false man. I came across the void upon the Posar to save you and the peoples you gathered. We shook hands, but I understand if you don't recognize me. I have made significant improvements since then. Sam shut his eyes for a moment, and then opened them slowly. All right. This is happening. Okay. What is it you need to report, Rockborn? Rockborn stared back through his multi-spectrum sensitive eyes. Callie has been relieved as mission commander on the planet newly coined Immerwald. We have made contact with a sentient alien species. Also, said alien species co-evolved on this world with both the Gree and the Gallic, driving the Gallic nearly to extinction. Oh, Sam said. Why is Callie unfit for leadership? She is now the living avatar of the planet, sir. Oh. Sam shifted in his seat. All right. He looked at Callie. So, Callie, you're a planet now? She nodded. It's like the Gallic in Greece, sir. except it cohabitates living bodies, kind of like trees and funguses living together in a forest floor, sharing nutrients and all that. Sam nodded. Okay, are you all right? She nodded in return. Yes, I'm still me, I'm just them also. Them? She made a wry smile. Well, everything else on the planet. We're still new to it. They are learning to use consciousness, see through me, and I'm learning to see through them. It's weird. Kinda hard to explain. Well, I understand then why you're abdicating your position. Well, how does the mission stand? By the way, good job on rallying funding. Damn told me about it, and I respect it. I get it, Sam. You got a kid on the way. You're wanting to shore up defenses, allocate funding elsewhere. Really, I get it, Callie said. We wanted to give you updates on it because we could help each other. Oh, Sam said. Yeah, I remember what happened with the Gallic, and I want to offer help to them. This time, rather than attacking one another, fighting, I think we could come to peaceful terms. Their capabilities would aid me on this world, help settle it without hurting the ecosystems. Also, I wish to invite the Gree back home. They too would be helpful. Sam nodded. That would help me with some issues I'm having greatly. That is good. Sam stared at them. You're not going to be having them fight or kill them for resources or some shit, are you? Callie shook her head. No. Looking back, they were good at breaking down deceased bodies. I could fit them in some of my niches. Now that I can potentially talk with them, peace might be doable. All right. Good. I like it. That does help. Josiah spoke up. We need something in return from you. Sam looked at him. Ask. Let's see if it's doable. Josiah started to speak, pausing several times before he could get it out. Callie's pregnant. We don't know what our kid is going to be like. We're going to need somewhere safe, with monitoring, to raise it. We think Twain would be capable, if not Twain. Maybe the orbital platform here if it were upgraded similar. What do you think? What are the risks? Sam asked. Callie spoke up. I am keeping the Immerwald away from my womb, but I don't know how much he is affected. I want him to grow up human, be human. He might be different, though. I don't think any of the filaments are in him, but I want him to have doctors accessible. Preservers and air, you know? Sam nodded. I can easily spare resources to develop a habitat here for you. That is a fair deal. Callie shook her head. I'll stay here. Josiah and the baby will return, maybe some of the other crew when it is time. Right now, everyone is still on task. Research has recommenced. Sam looked at Rockborn. There any risk to the crew from the planet? Rockborn deliberately shook his head. Suits have been mandated. Callie is pulling most life forms away from the habitus. Grape juice is taking samples from species Callie is presenting. Josiah laughed. You should see it, Sam. She has it going like Noah's Ark here. The things are lined up from the door to the ocean waiting to submit biosamples. It's freaky. Sam thought it over for a moment. Keep me in the loop. I want updates daily. Don't get absorbed or whatever. Rockborn gave a formal bow. Yes, sir. We will keep you posted. We have to talk with other parties now, though. Thank you for your time. Thank you all. Tell damn hi for me. Callie smiled. Will do. Take care, Sam. Sam crept out of the apartment without waking Olivia. He met Tato at the corner junction and the two began their jog. Thanks, Tato. Thank you for the offer, Sam. It is always a pleasure. They started down their favorite misty hall, herding the squishies in front of them. Sam took in a healthy breath. It sucks being in charge. I make a decision and it cascades into a bunch of horrible consequences. Tato bounced beside him. That is part of being a leader. You make the calls. It sucks. I like to think I'm doing right, but I don't know if I even know what is right. It's easy to get lost when looking at the blend. Don't look at the blend. The blend. Tato rotated his quadra-sided head and focused on Sam. One side is easy to see. The void, death, cold, fire, no life. The other side is easy to see. Comfort, life, beauty, birth. Where one gets confused is when you see the middle ground, where the fight is. There, life and death, void and comfort, it all blends. That is where we live, always a short league away from the darkness. You have done well growing the comfort of those living with you. Focus on that, and you are doing right. Sam smiled, keeping pace as the two turned into their second favorite hall. You're pretty wise, Tado. And yet my people would be dead if not for your capacity to understand and help others. Sam was silent in thought for a moment. Others are dying because of my fear of them. Why do you fear them? They hurt people here, almost killed a world. Sounds like you are right to fear them, Tado said as he bounced around Sam, dodging a light fixture on the wall. I don't know what to do. I have a choice to make, and it sounds like it's right in the blend. I can't see a way out. It's your choice, but I'm sure you'll make the right one. You've done well so far. I've been lucky, Sam said. This one seems wrong with both choices. Then chose the third. Sam looked at him and laughed. Maybe. Yeah, I'll keep looking at it. Maybe there's something else I could do about it. There always is, and if there isn't, then whatever will happen while you wait. Sam, still jogging, grew solemn thinking on that.